Vanishing Point, a novel by Keith A. Kenel, 22 of 101. Part 22. Harper Mann took notes while Stacy Shannon retold the afternoon's occurrences to her and Mrs. Lair. Stacy used chronological order to tell the story succinctly, beginning with Schuyler's strange statement that not only had she, Sean Ewell, and Sarah Conan seen her dead father during recess, but that Jim Lance had spoken to the man. She explained that Schuyler recognized the impossibility that her 3-year deceased father had risen from a Jefferson County, Alabama grave and was now walking around Trinity, Florida, but she insisted that it was so. She was just so distraught that I promised her I'd follow up, Stacy said, adding, "Of course, I figured I'd quickly lay the thing to rest, but then little glitches popped up." Turning the corners of her mouth down, opening her eyes wide, and slightly thrusting her head forward, Stacy continued. Ms. Ewell had confirmed Schuyler's story that the girl had inquired about the stranger at the end of recess, but Sean reported that Schuyler had made no mention of recognizing the stranger, and certainly had not mentioned that she believed the man to be her deceased father, Caleb Ezra Morse. My confusion began when Sean mentioned that she was pretty sure that the man at recess today had also been named Caleb, though she couldn't remember the stranger's last name. I have to admit that the name being the same put a shiver down my spine, and my task changed from merely trying to assuage Schuyler to being a bit concerned. At the beginning of the day, Schuyler and Sarah had mentioned that Schuyler was going to sleep over at the Conans tonight. They were both very excited, and I chose to keep the girls till the very last in order to speak with Mrs. Conan regarding Schuyler's perplexing concerns and the coincidence of Caleb being both Schuyler's father's name and that of the stranger. Once I dismissed the other children, I walked the girls outside to find Mrs. Conan and explain what had happened at recess today and to clue her in on how upset Schuyler was. After a less than cordial interaction with Mrs. Conan, I returned to the building with the intention of finding out what Suzanne, Stacy paused, turned to her right, and gave Suzanne a smile, could tell me concerning her conversation with Jim and the report she filed. As fate would have it, I bumped into Jim on my way to the office. "I bet your meeting with Marty Conan was less than cordial," Suzanne said with a scowl. "I think that only time that woman is happy is when everyone else is miserable." Dr. Mann gave Suzanne a sharp-eyed, tight-lipped glance and said, "What was it that was bothering Marty?" she asked. "Oh, it was just that I made her wait out in the heat in order to speak to her about Schuyler's concerns. Stacy hesitated to find a suitable word. Suggested that rather than inconveniencing her, that everyone could have been better served if I'd called Carla Kaiser instead." "I bet she did," Suzanne said. "Go on, Stacy," Harper said, shaking her head at the secretary. "I bumped into Jim and quizzed him on what he knew. I was careful not to change his perceptions of what had happened this afternoon, but I did have to prompt him concerning the man's name. Jim remembered that it started with the hard C sound, but I provided him with the name Caleb. Jim agreed that this was a strange coincidence, but as I stated earlier, it's pretty hard to reconcile Caleb Ezra Morse being dead and buried in Birmingham and also wandering around Interlaken. After speaking with Jim, I filled in Suzanne with what I knew. By the way, the man Jim spoke with gave Held as his last name, and after talking to her, we decided to consult with you. Oh, and Jim mentioned the possibility of security footage with this Caleb Held fellow." Harper Mann turned her head slightly to the side and stopped taking notes. "That is a strange set of circumstances, and certainly the coincidences give me pause. How about the security camera, Suzanne? Any chance of our mystery man being caught on film?" "There's a chance," she answered, nodding her head, "but I haven't run it through yet. When Jim contacted me during recess, I tried to aim a camera to the part of the fence he indicated that Caleb Held was standing by, but it was a seat-of-the-pants attempt. Only Stacy came to me. I wasn't overly concerned about him as the man was standing outside the perimeter and watching children play. That's not overly suspicious, and people do walk by the school." "Of course," Harper said. "Normally I'd agree with you. If nothing else, though, we should check the footage and contact Schuyler's mother just to fill her in. Do you mind making the call, Stacy? You obviously know what's going on here better than anyone else." "No, ma'am, I don't mind. I'd already decided I needed to speak to Mrs. Kaiser."